Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to edit photos in Photoshop. So Photoshop is basically an image manipulation program. It lets you edit pictures. And for journalism, the most common uses of Photoshop are drawing stuff or, cropping pictures. So let's say I had this animal here, and I wanted the text to go right above its nose, just curve around the nose. But you see this picture has this gray, right? So InDesign isn't smart enough to realize that that there is the edges over here. In some later versions, there's edge detection, but that's never very reliable. So the best bet is to go with Photoshop. So to edit the picture, we're going to right-click it, edit with Adobe Photoshop, and if you installed CS5 from my previous tutorial, it'll just show up there. So it'll take a second. Okay, so you'll notice a couple things about this image. First off, it's a pretty nice edge. I mean, it's mostly gray here. There's a couple ways you could go around erasing this layer. But first, let's examine this. You see this lock here means that you can't edit this layer. It's called the background layer. So in Photoshop, images can be made out of layers, which is basically stacks of images on top of each other. In order to get something called an alpha, you're going to have to duplicate this layer. So just right-click this layer, duplicate, and this eye thing is adjusting visibility. So if I click this eye, then the layer underneath, nothing looked like it happened, but actually underneath this picture of this animal, there's another picture of the animal that suddenly just disappeared. So if I vanish both of them, then you'll see you're just seeing the alpha channel. And basically alpha channel is transparency. So transparency is what we're going for, right? So if we go back to the top layer and take our eraser tool. So actually when I was a little kid, I always wondered what the difference between an eraser was and the white brush. And it turns out there wasn't a difference, but in Photoshop there is, because in Photoshop the white brush just paints white, and the eraser actually deletes image data. So one way to get rid of this is to just erase manually, and you can change the brush size by right-clicking and changing, or going up here and changing it. But it's kind of slow, and I mean it's a little bit hard. You know, I might crop the nose by accident or something like that. Also, undoing in Photoshop is different. So in Microsoft Word, you press Ctrl-Z to undo, and if you want to go back another step, you press Ctrl-Z. But in Photoshop, the first time is Ctrl-Z, and subsequent ones are, I believe, Alt Control-C, or in Macs, Option Command-Z. Yeah, and you can also just go back to here and just step backward. You'll see the appropriate command. So anyway, eraser is okay, but it's not that useful because it's not very accurate. So this gray background is very gray, and a very common technique I like to use is called color range. So select this gray color, and you'll notice that it finds all this matching color, and the dark stuff is going to end up being not selected. The white stuff will be selected. I don't want any of this animal to be selected, so I'm going to kind of reduce it a bit and press OK. So now all the gray has been selected. I just press delete, and it'll get rid of a lot of the alpha. Now there's these ants marching, right? But I can't seem to get rid of them. And this is basically selection. So in order to get rid of selection, just because if you have OCD or something, to get rid of selection, you have to use a selection tool. You can use this lasso, this square thing, and just press deselect. Okay. And similarly, you could also select inverse. So I'm selecting everything but this square, and by selecting inverse, I'm only selecting the square. Yeah. Now Photoshop is really complicated, so I'm actually not going to talk too much about it. But let's say we're done. But if you remember, most sections have grayscale pictures. We can't have color because it's too expensive. So go to Image Mode, Grayscale, and it might ask you to merge. It really doesn't matter. You can do it if you want. Now it's time to save. But if you'll notice, the previous files was a JPEG, and JPEGs don't allow multiple layers and alpha channels and things like that. So use a Photoshop format. The files are a little bit big, but it's pretty nice to work with. And save it somewhere safe because of the way InDesign links files. So now we've saved it. Give it a moment. Oops. Okay, so it's there. Okay, so to replace this file, you can either press Ctrl D again, or you can go to Links and relink to this new file. Apply text wrap. So as you can see here, the text wrap hasn't worked yet, but that's because of the text wrap setting. You want to go to alpha channel, and that'll cause the nose to be wrapped. And to increase the distance, all you have to do is just increase this number here. So that's how you do text wrapping in InDesign. Pretty complicated, but easy once you get the hang of it. And if you'll notice that this file is a link file, you want to make sure you keep it in a safe location, because if you don't, then InDesign will have issues when you try to export the final product. So that's all. In the next tutorial, I'll be talking more about the text options and fonts and things like that.